let me start tonight with a story that I was shocked by only because I'm kind of glad to see how much backlash it received. And it involves an evangelical pastor who is getting a lot of criticism after basically telling a new bride something very inappropriate on her wedding night. And I have some clips for you as we go through this. And if you don't know what story this is, I don't know, maybe you'll be shocked when you see this. So, the pastor in question, his name is Josh Howerton. He leads Lakepointe Church, which is a mega church in Rockwall, Texas. I believe it's one of the fastest growing churches in Texas. So you get the idea. It's in one of those non-denominational places where every stereotype you think about evangelicals, it's a church like this. And this sermon that he delivered was actually delivered on February 24th, but it only started getting attention like in the past week for reasons I'll explain later. But let me set you up before I play you this clip. His church had just had like a marriage night event right before this Sunday sermon. And I think that was an event designed for newly married couples, like to navigate the path forward through their marriage. And so it had just happened. It was a big thing. They'd been advertising it for a while. And the pastor, Josh Howerton, is basically saying to his crowd, to his congregation, people are asking me, what did you all discuss at that event? And of course, he's not going to rehash the entire thing in the span of 30 seconds. So instead of telling them everything that happened, he decided to give them what he calls a gold nugget of advice. And I want you to remember that word, advice, because he's going to deny that it's advice later. He's going to offer everybody a gold nugget of advice in the form of a joke. He thinks it's a hilarious joke. All right. And this is some advice for everyone in the congregation who may be on the path toward marriage. Okay. So I'm going to play you the first half of this clip, and then we'll talk about this in just a second.
This is a gold nugget of advice I was given by a mentor. Okay, so this is free. Can y'all handle it? Okay, this is free. This is free. Okay. Now first, let me do this. So let me talk to the guys first. Guys, when it comes to her wedding day, she has been planning this day her entire life. She got her first wedding magazine when she was 14. She draped the blanket around her like it was her wedding dress when she was a teenager. She did the towel over her head. It was a little veil, all the stuff. She's been planning this day her whole life. So here's what she need to do, man. When it comes to that day, just stand where she tells you to stand, wear what she tells you to wear, and do what she tells you to do. You'll make her the happiest woman in the world, okay?
Okay. I mean, I don't love that advice, mostly because it suggests that every woman is the exact same, that every woman has been thinking about her wedding and literally nothing else has ever taken on that sort of magnitude her entire life, as if the goal of every woman is to get married and it all goes downhill from there. I mean, it's just a very stereotypical way of looking at marriage. But obviously, he's not meaning any harm by that. So, okay, fine. By the way, it also suggests, it's her wedding day. It's not yours, men. It's not your wedding day. You don't have to deal with any of the planning, apparently. You don't have to deal with the stress that comes with the wedding. It's her wedding day. You just show up and look nice. She'll take care of everything else. Like, that's a lot of burden to put on any one person. So I don't love that advice, but okay, it's not that big of a deal. He didn't mean any of that. Whatever. That was part one of what he said. And I will now play you this. That was the setup to his joke. Let me show you the punchline, because this is where things really just go off the rail. Okay.
Now, I got an amen. Let's see if you amen this. Now, ladies, when it comes to his wedding night, he has been planning this day his whole life. So just stand where he tells you to stand, wear what he tells you to wear, and do what he tells you to do, and you're going to make him the happiest man in the world. That's it, man. Okay. That was free. That was free. Acts chapter 1.
How's that for a segue? Let's go to the Bible now that I've told you a sex joke. This is, I guess, what's known in evangelical circles as humor, and what's known outside evangelical circles as the reason we left church. So, look, I'll get this out of the way. I don't think whatever you're thinking, I don't think that was his intention. I'm sure he would condemn any horrible insinuation he's making with that joke. But I do think it's worth talking about the crux of this joke because I think it says a lot about white evangelical culture, Christian culture, purity culture, and the double standards that exist in Christian circles and what evangelical men think about evangelical women. Like, in order for that joke, and you should just assume I'm saying joke every time with big quote fingers and stuff, that only makes sense if we're assuming a handful of things. One, as I've already mentioned, is that the husband does not have any say in the wedding itself, in the ceremony, doesn't have any say in it, doesn't even really care about it. Apparently, all he has to do is show up. That's assumed for this joke to make sense, right? It's her wedding day. Okay. Number two, it assumes that both people getting married are virgins, which is, I mean, it's a weird assumption to make, even in conservative Christian circles, because I have heard many stories about what all you people do at Bible camp in the summer. So, okay, it's assuming they're both virgins. There's a whole bunch we could say about how that's definitely not the case and how they shame people, usually women, who are not virgins. But okay, separate issue. I won't talk about that here. It also assumes, like I said, that the bride has no other ambition in life other than to get married. And I think that's messed up. It's all she's ever dreamed about. But this is the important bit. For this joke to make any sense, it assumes that the woman must do whatever her husband wants in the bedroom, and her own pleasure is at best an afterthought because it is his wedding night. It was her wedding day, but it's his night and he gets to do whatever he wants. So, ladies, just stand where he tells you to stand, wear what he tells you to wear, and do what he tells you to do. And you get no say in what happens. You just have to do whatever your husband says. It's also weird because it suggests that these two virgins who just got married, presumably because they're virgins, they don't know anything about sex. And that's why this joke makes sense, right? Because the wedding night is the first time they're allowed to have sex in that culture. But how come, if they're both virgins, how come the guy is apparently a total expert? He knows exactly what he wants his wife to wear. He knows exactly what he wants her to do. Like, how would he know all that if he is also an inexperienced virgin? Like, that's weird. That goes unstated, but it is weird. It also, by the way, it assumes that this couple has to have sex on their wedding night. And if you've ever had a wedding, you know how stressful and exhausting that day is. Everything may go beautifully and perfectly well, and it may be a wonderful day in your life, and that's great, but it is exhausting. I mean, I think most couples I've ever met are like, yeah, after our wedding, we went to a hotel room or something and we passed out because we were tired. This idea that, oh no, once the wedding is over, you still have to do all this. Like, that's a lot of pressure to put on two virgins. Obviously, there's no room in this joke for couples who are not straight, which is worth saying. But man, the joke hinges on the idea that this woman is obligated not to have sex with her husband, but to give sex to her husband. And he gets to dictate whatever he wants, and she's not allowed to say no. There is no consent in this joke. That is weird. And also, again, I'm not trying to pick apart a guy's unfunny joke here, but it's that mindset that bothers me because people in the congregation seem to think it was funny too, right? And as many Christians will tell you, it's that mindset that has perpetuated spousal abuse and physical abuse in white evangelical circles. Mark Driscoll, the famously abusive Christian pastor, once said women were created to be penis homes. Like, that's what their use was. I also wanted to bring this up because several years ago, there was a story that made the news because it involved a Southern Baptist preacher, a leader named Paige Patterson. And I want to show you this headline from the Washington Post back at the time. Southern Baptist leader pushes back after comments leak urging abused women to pray and avoid divorce. And just look at the first paragraph here. This is from, by the way, what's the date here? It's April 2018. This is years ago. The leader of a major Southern Baptist seminary issued a statement Sunday pushing back after a 2000 tape surfaced purporting to quote him, saying that abused women should focus on praying and be submissive in every way that you can and not seek divorce. Like, again, this is the mindset that exists in these circles. Specifically, this is also in the article. He basically says that if you are being abused in your relationship, you should just pray and stay. And one thing I want to show you, one really disturbing aspect of this article here. Let's read this bit together. This is from that year 2000 tape. He goes on to tell the story of a woman who came to him about abuse and how he counseled her to pray at night beside her bed quietly for God to intervene. The woman, he said, came to him later with 2 black eyes. She said, "I hope you're happy." And I said, "Yes, I'm very happy," because it turned out her husband had heard her quiet prayers and come for the first time to church the next day. He said, "See, ladies, who cares if you're abused as long as your man comes to church?" Again, this was not okay in 2000. That's why it made headlines in 2018 when that tape surfaced. Um, so the fact that in 2024, this pastor Howerton, Josh Howerton in Texas, is still telling women a joke like, women, just stand where your husband tells you to stand and do whatever he tells you to do. Like, the bride in that joke does not get to say no. She's not permitted to chime in with, "Hey, here's what I want in the bedroom." Her orgasms are irrelevant. It's also implied that, again, she knows nothing about sex, but he knows everything about it, which is weird because we are assuming these people are virgins. This sermon was actually titled, "Am I Going to Heaven or Hell?" And I feel like his joke tells us where he's going, where he deserves to go anyway. So why, if this sermon was given in February, why did it go viral recently? Well, it's because there is a blogger, a writer, her name is Sheila Gregar, and she posted about this. She posted a clip. I'm showing you this here. She posted this clip back last week, and she played for you the segments I just played for you. But this is where she got to. I wanted to share this here. The number of men commenting, "It was just a joke," is so telling. Spreading messages that result in 2.5 times higher rate of vaginismus is not funny. Marital rape is not funny. Normalizing sexual coercion is not funny. Not caring at all about female pleasure is not funny. And she's right. I mean, that's, of course it's not funny. It's not funny because I hope people who hear all that are like, "Oh, dude, if that's your idea of a joke, you need to go back in time many decades to when we were making fun of our wives or something." Like, what part of that is funny to you? He did chime in. The pastor eventually chimed in. It's the only thing I could find that he posted about any of this. And this is what he said. I'm going to the second paragraph here. The person who originally posted this, that's Sheila Gregar, she took an old preacher joke about marriage, edited out the comment immediately before aimed at men, and then very conveniently ended the clip before it's made clear it's part of a joke. I'm just going to chime in here to say, I just played for you the beginning of the joke, and I played for you a little after the end of the joke. And even in context, it's not funny. Like, the context does not help this pastor make his case. They then deceitfully presented it as my advice to women, where if all you saw was the quote or the clip they selectively edited, you don't know it was half of a joke, not advice. Buddy, you opened that segment by calling this a gold nugget of advice. Your words, not hers, not anybody else's. So, like, he's not making anything better. I will tell you that Sheila Gregar then posted the full clip, but again, doesn't make this guy look any better. We already knew he was trying to tell a joke. The problem is the joke isn't funny and it has a really despicable underlying message. Like, honestly, instead of talking about heaven and hell, Pastor Howerton here, his congregation would be so much better off if he spoke about why many white evangelical women feel trapped in a misogynistic church culture that teaches them to be submissive while always putting their husband's needs above their own. But pastors like him don't have the courage to do that. Or maybe they don't have the capacity to understand why their comments are so off putting. And that's why they keep repeating these mistakes. There was an article about this in Baptist News, Global Baptist News, and they actually quoted someone I have a lot of respect for, April Ajoy. If you're not following her on Twitter, you should. But check this out. April Ajoy, co-host of the Evangelical-ish podcast, she told Baptist News Global that rhetoric leads women to view sex and marriage as a duty, not something to enjoy. While his words were more overt, it's not niche. But look at this. Ajoy remembers, I was taught that it's the wife's job to please her husband even when she's not in the mood. I remember being a young girl at women's church events where the leaders would talk about the importance of wives putting out and how sex is something men need. And if that need wasn't met, husbands could look elsewhere. I was never once taught about female pleasure. It took me years into my own marriage and lots of therapy before I stopped objectifying myself and could actually enjoy intimacy in marriage. Like, oh my God, she nails it. And what she is saying is something I have also read and heard from so many Christians and ex-evangelicals and people who grew up in that culture. Like, the problem isn't that this pastor told a bad joke. It's that this pastor is creating an environment in his church where jokes like that get laughs. And that is the problem with all of this. Like, do you think a new bride, a woman who has been sexually assaulted by her husband, or any man for that matter, do you think any woman in that church who has been through that trauma is going to go to that guy or any leader at this church for help? No, they can't trust him because they've heard him say this joke. They know that he thinks they have an obligation to fulfill. And if they don't like it or they don't want to do it or they have a problem with it, he's not a guy you can talk to about any of this because he's not their ally. He's on the men's side here. They can get away with whatever they want. And if that's not true, he has an obligation to tell his congregation that. So now the question is, what's this pastor going to do about this? Is he just going to keep blaming the people who don't like his joke? Or is he actually going to take the criticism seriously? I know what I think he's going to do. He's going to do the latter. He's just going to pretend none of this happened and everyone who doesn't like it just doesn't get humor. But if he actually cared about the people in his congregation, there is an easy path for him to take. Show up to church on Sunday, apologize for that joke that wasn't funny, and then spend the sermon talking about why his stupid joke wasn't funny and why his church is a safe space for those women. He won't do that because his church is not. But that's the easy thing he could do. I want to leave you with one thing that someone else wrote. She said she used to go to this church. I can't confirm this, but look at what he wrote here. What she wrote here. I need to publicly apologize to everyone on Twitter for my previous words here defending my former pastor. I was blind, but I can see now. I am thanking God for prompting us to leave prior to this sermon so my two teenage daughters were not exposed to this spiritual abuse. Harsh words. And it's not like, I don't know if that woman has left Christianity. She may still believe in God, but she doesn't trust that church leader. She doesn't trust that church. And why should she? She has no good reason to trust that church.